Hey, this is Dr. Alex G., your podcast host of the award-winning podcast Black Like Me. And I'm feeling a number of emotions right now. Confusion, dumbfounded, bewildered. I don't even know if anger's the right word. But I'm feeling a lot of emotions today. And I didn't even realize where these emotions were coming from because it's been such a busy day until I just sort of sat here and I'm pondering the recent election, the presidential election that was called early this morning. Jeremy, are you surprised I'm having all of these crazy emotions, Jeremy?
I am not at all surprised. I'm having lots of emotions myself.
You know, okay, what's interesting, and it's what I love about being a podcaster is that I can put some of my feelings out. I will honestly say, in the course of my life, I voted Republican and Democrat. Like I can tell you, I voted for Tommy Thompson, who was our governor, Republican governor. I voted for Doyle. And so just for the record, I'm not a card carrying anything. But I think what I'm wrestling with is what this is saying about civic life in America, cultural life in America, where we've been, where we're going. I feel like I'm in a deep sleep. And so I can handle 4 more years of belligerence. We got through the other 4 years. It's sort of like a blur. We could get through it. I mean, you know, it's right up there with the pandemic. It wasn't fun. But what I'm really trying to ponder is for the rest of just for the country in general, for our world here in the United States of America, what doth this portend? Like, what's the subcontext? What does the win mean? I used to think that if things were blatant, like someone's wrongdoing, it might shame them or coerce them into changing course. So people would say, oh, you pull back the covers. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that this person was a felon. We can find out that a person was a sex offender 30 years ago, but we don't want them in our community. And I'm not being insensitive to that, whose families were victims of crimes by sexual perpetrators. I'm not trying to be insensitive to that. But I'm struck by how selective we are with our memories and how people can ignore, 34 counts, 37 counts of wrongdoing. Like how you ignore that, how you give covering to someone and their felonies, to fully discount, if not dismiss that, in order to get an agenda that really moves us backwards in some ways. I think the full orchestration of all of that, not just the election, but the full orchestration of all of that just makes me think, and this is right out in the open. So it's not like, I think that there's some white supremacy shit going on, or, hey, I think there's some white privilege going on. Like, it's right out there on every channel. People can see it. And it's almost at a level like, you know what? I don't even give a damn. This is who we are. This is what we think. This is what we want. We want to make America great. We don't give a rip about these other kinds of things. And it's not even covered or hushed or camouflaged. It's like right in your face with sort of this sense of how you like me now kind of mentality. And I think that's what's bringing on some of the emotions that I'm feeling.
Well, I was thinking about this on the way over, I get torn between two things. One of which is people talking about sort of the phenomenon of Trump being new. There's this new rancor. There's this new terribleness. Maybe we're saying the bad stuff out loud. But I've been reading a lot of history lately for this podcast and for my own, education. And I just think about, like, if this isn't new, like, what part of America is Trump? And what I thought about coming over, and I mean, I'll just throw it out there, is
Sure.
The smugness that he has reminds me of the smugness I saw in the faces of the guys who bombed those 4 girls at the church in Birmingham. Spike Lee made the film about it. And, like, they knew they were going to do it. And they knew they weren't going to get in any trouble at all. And just the way they smiled at the back. So this is what I'm going to say. Trump is a lynchman, right? Trump does the function that groups of people need him to do. And there's been people like him for a long time.
Right. He's not new.
microphone fell over in the studio.
Trump is here.
The spirit is moving.
No, not that spirit. Get him out. I rebuke thee, Trump.
But I mean, because I think it doesn't make sense to me that that there'd be a politician that would be so terrible and very proud of it, and that people wouldn't look. People would choose that person to be to lead them. And I think that, I mean, like, if somebody was going to lynch somebody, they needed somebody to do it, right? And
Right.
if somebody needed to bomb a bunch of black businesses or cause a lot of havoc, men whose names we don't know played those roles throughout history.
Right. They're like, I'll do it. I'll do it. Give me the gasoline.
Right, yeah, and they're proud to do it.
They're proud to do it. It's my duty.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, because I can't. I think it's hard to say that Trump is the cause of all this,
Oh, definitely.
right? But it feels like he isn't, like, because the more terrible he makes himself, for some reason that makes him more popular with a lot of people, and I think it's because whatever the group of people, like, we collectively, or whatever group this people is, needed someone to do dirty work. So the dirtier they are, the more they're going to choose them to do it.
Right. Like growing up, we probably had friends if we wanted someone to throw a rock at a window, or we wanted someone to moon a substitute teacher, whatever the grotesque act is. There's one person who you'd say, let's get Mikey. Yeah, he'll eat it. Or he won't eat it, however the commercial goes. He eats everything. Like, they knew that Mikey was sort of the human garbage disposal. You know who to go to if you wanted someone to sort of say something obscene under their breath, and then we all run away. He seems to be this person who does this, but he's also probably the greatest depiction of invincibility that I've seen. Like, he said years ago, I could kill somebody and walk down, Fifth Avenue, whatever it was in New York. I'm butchering the statement or the saying, but one thing you can say about him, he will say it and then he'll do it. So it's not like we're surprised he's doing it, but I think we're surprised that he's letting other people do it. And as you mentioned, he's the, what'd you say? He's the lynchman.
He's the lynchman. Yeah.
He's the lynchman. But we have this thing in our law that you're an accomplice, and so now it's not just Trump. Like I'm not just looking at him like, okay, he's off the rails. He's this, he's that. But I've got to look at the 71 million people that voted. 71 million. What is America? 235 million, almost 300 million. Like that's a big chunk of the American population. But the people who are like, yep, we're not going to hush him. We're not going to censor him. We're not going to shut him down. And we're going to make laws that if you're in this role as a president, you can't be tried. And we're going to be the Supreme Court that's going to stand behind him. And we're going to roll the cameras back on stuff and not fear repercussion or not fear how we're viewed on the international platform, or what this means for our own infrastructure, for our own sense of hope, or what this means for our kids, our grandkids. I think the co-signing of this by such a large swath of people, of Americans, has really got me concerned. I'm sitting here talking with Jeremy Holiday. I'm thinking out loud with him. Jeremy Holiday is part of my podcast team, is a researcher, editor, engineer, and I'm just talking out loud. And so it's not that, oh my gosh, there's a Republican in the office. I've done my work under both administrations. I know how to work across the aisle. But we all can agree this is a whole different thing. But the brazen mentality, the in your face, the kind of, I told you I'm back kind of things, like what you gonna tell me now? How you gonna start me? How you gonna stop me now? Makes me think, well, what won't he do? What won't he say? What won't he accomplish? Now that he's understood that people believe he's somewhat invincible, and he's been shot at and shot, like, they're treating him Messiah-like.
I agree. It's creepy.
Huh.
Well, I just when it just, so two things. One, I absolutely echo your sentiment that my feelings towards Trump have not changed.
Right.
But when I see all of the people, and more people voted for him this time than last time he was running for election, that just cuts my heart out. I'm like, Trump's a terrible person, but to see so many people seemingly endorse all of the terrible things that he says, that's what really gets me.
And how do we do that and still call ourselves a great nation? Like, how do we become great? How do we, like, on what front are we world leaders on anything positive? Like, those are the things that I'm thinking about. It's not on compassion. Um, I mean, we have a world leader. We all know. I'm not going to even spend my own airtime running down his sordid pedigree. But I'm just trying to think, man, if Biden or Harris or Obama had three moving violations, or if their driver's license had ever been removed, whatever it's called when you use up all your points in speeding or what have you, they would play that to the hilt. But to do things like sexual assaults and perjury and bribery and sexual abuse and impropriety and bankruptcy and all of these kinds of things, and the country and those who call themselves the moral leaders are like, so we just we want to be moral, and we want to be upstanding, and we want to bring back our values really at any cost, at any cost. I get your platform, I get your party wanting to do those things. Okay, you want to be more conservative fiscally, you want to have smaller government. Those things I can understand and say, you know what? Okay, I may not agree on everything, or I might agree on more than you realize, and say, okay, that's a valid point. But when you got convictions and you're talking about being the leader of the free world, is that what you want your sons and daughters to see on television? Do you want them to think that that's how you move up? Like, this is not The Apprentice. This is the real world. These are people's lives. And so that's all of what I'm processing. And then I'm also trying to realize, while still giving myself room to feel, the disappointment of, man, what would it have been like to have a black woman who has who represents black women that have done so much for our country, our families, our churches, our communities. What would it be like to have someone that could unify us? Because he's not a unifier. Like, what would it be like to heal? And then, you know what? That's causing me some issues too, Jeremy, because I mean, did or didn't Biden say at his inauguration or his acceptance speech that he was an interim type of person, that he was transitional, he's getting ready for somebody else? So then you give this person, 107 days to turn things around? Like, come on, people knew that Emperor had no clothes on, and nobody could say, Emperor, your crack is showing. And then in the summer, like, I was on vacation, so like in July, you're going to be like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, what we saw at that debate, people had to have seen that. Like, good morning and saying, good night. They had to know something was going on. So then I don't know. Honestly, I'm just out here just spitballing. I don't know that her own party did her any better than the Republicans did. And then she's got to still maintain his face and his platform and his agenda while trying to turn it a little bit to talk about that it's a new day, and to give that to her at that point, at that what's it called, 11th hour, makes me think about what we have said in our own community. You can tell when something's really jacked up when all of a sudden people want to be inclusive. So let's bring in a black police chief. Let's bring in a black superintendent. Let's bring in a black, whatever the key role is. You can tell when things are really messed up, because it's time to think about diversity. And so then let's let it all blow up on them. And so you get to this point where things are in a mess. You can't do this anymore. It's 100 days before the election. Everyone knows that you can't go into campaign. What would you have gotten? Just Delaware? And then you're going to hand the baton to her. So no, it's just a lot. I know I'm rambling, but it is just a whole lot. And then I think about the black men who would rather vote for Trump than for her. I don't know what percentage that is. I don't know if the media blew that up.
I did see a statistic this morning based on exit polls that 86% of black people voted for Harris and only 12% voted for Trump. It was the biggest differential of any of the demographic groups.
Yeah, that's not inconsequential. I mean,
No, not at. I mean,
wow. Like what? Like what did they see? What did they think? And whose fault is that? Like, I mean, that's got to lie somewhere. What is Trump offering them that is appealing? And what did Kamala not offer? What did Biden, what did the Dems not offer? So, I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around to be that out of touch about that percentage of black votes. Where were the targeted ads and where were the meetings? I mean, President Obama did something with black men, but I don't know. It's just, man, it is a mess. We got our work cut out for us. And, on one hand, I'm thinking, okay, let's just do these 4 years quickly. Let's just stand on our heads and get it done. But, will things change at the midterm elections? Is Vance the new prodigy? Is he the face of, MAGA? And how are they getting him ready? And what is the what is the Democratic Party doing in response to all of this? Are they reading the exit polls and the exit interviews properly to know how to adjust itself? And how did it get so out of touch? There's just so much stuff that's going on in the world and that needs to get done. And the fallout of this is just going to impact so many people. And man, I'm getting texts from, my fellow people, my fellow Black people. I just got one from my Ministers Alliance, like, hey, how are y'all doing today? And people are saying, man, I'm in disbelief, or I'm depressed, or man, here we go again. Because I think we got used to not hearing that ranting and name calling and that voice and the media covering it. And the media's got to be happy because they're about to make some money. I mean, because they like covering him and giving him, what's his cabinet going to look like? Like it's like, is he going to create stuff so that he can run another term? Like this is like an AI moment. I don't even know what's real and what isn't real. Like stuff that I thought you couldn't do. Like you can do 2 terms, but then you're done. And so is this like a new term? Can he do 2 now? Or is it just 2 and you can't do any more? But will he change the rules? Will the Supreme Court say, let's let him be a benevolent dictator? Like I have no idea what's real anymore in political circles.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, it does feel like, whatever metaphor you want, it feels like we've jumped the shark. And like for me, so many things. Well, but I did want to ask you, like, how are you doing?
You know what? I don't even know yet. I feel this sense of numbness. My day started early with some key meetings, like at 7:30. So I had to get I had to leave home, when it's barely daylight. And so I'm slowing down now, and I think the wave of emotions are hitting me. I think that's why I'm sort of just throwing things out. But and whether this is healthy or right or not, I think I'm trying to find the silver lining in this. Like, all right, how do we gather? What do we see? How do we not let this take the full wind out of our sails? What's the strategy to diffuse this? Like, are we just all screwed? And because, of that he's in this place again, it doesn't mean that we need to organize differently, communicate differently. So I'm trying to figure out what's the response. What I don't want to do is walk around for the next 3 months saying, can you believe it? Sort of like New Year's Day. Like, how long do you say Happy New Year? Like, okay, it's Black History Month. You start saying Happy Black History Month, or do you say it until, like how long do you say it? Like, when is it no longer Happy New Year? When is it just like, hey, Happy Year? How long are we going to walk around saying, man, can you believe it? Can you believe it? When do we strategize and organize ourselves or plan our success even in this current reality? Because it's not like things are absolutely perfect for the Black community under Biden. So it's not like people are saying, whoa, life is good, money is flowing, everybody's making it rain. Thank you, God, for making, for just throwing out the money right out of heaven, pennies from heaven. And so is the answer dual citizenship? Because a lot of us have joked about it. Particularly Black folks, we have a lot of expats. We have a lot of Black people living abroad. Like, what's the response now? So.
I mean, I have a number of Jewish friends that have got dual citizenship either through the Austrian government a few years ago started like an initiative to give dual citizenship for people that could prove their families had been forcibly removed from that in the past. And many of them got that in order so that in case Trump gets elected again, they at least have choices to go and raise their children. The thing that had bothered me the most over the Trump years, and whether that's like when he's in office or this period after, it's just like hearing him talk all the time, and I probably a year and a half ago I stopped reading a lot of national media. I used to consume a lot of it. Used to want to be really up to date, but there's just this phenomenon of like Trump says something terrible. And then Seth Meyers talks about it on his show, and then all the other late night people talk about it on their show, and I'm like, I I mean, I know you guys are saying you don't like him, but you're putting his voice in everyone. Like, I don't go to
Right.
Trump rallies. I don't listen to Trump, but now Trump's voice is in my house because you're bringing it
Right.
in through these shows. I mean, he's obviously producing a lot of information for you, which is producing a lot of ratings, which is producing a lot of money. So
Right.
there's a whole system of people profiting off the fact that Trump is notable or outlier or extraordinary. And I mean, that's the part that I want to see change. Like,
Right.
I want folks to collectively to stop constantly talking about everything that
Right.
Trump does.
Right.
Because I mean, never met the person, Mr. Trump, but like he certainly knows how to get on news everywhere. Like
Right.
he knows the exact level of ridiculousness or
He's a marketing genius.
yeah. I mean and everyone goes along with it. And I think that I just got really frustrated when, like if Trump says something ridiculous, like Fox News will cover it and sort of show how it's great, but the liberal press will cover it too and say how it's terrible, but it still echoes that message out everywhere.
Right. Right. It's the preponderance of his voice and people repeating it. Right. We need to send a clear message this time around. You're right. We don't need every outlet talking about it. Like, can we just have some space where it's not the discussion? We have a guest who's a psychologist who had to cancel his appearance because there's so much dismay on his campus where students are just disillusioned. They're trying to figure out what's going on. I'm sure they've got friends, for a number of reasons, just fall under targeted groups of where they just feel like we're not safe. He's coming for us. That's got to be such a scary, scary thing. I feel like I'm thawing out. Back to your question about how I'm doing. I think I'm moving to I'm trying to find my rhythm and my strategy. How do I not let this consume me, but how do I operate within this reality? And what's the strategy? Is this the near future? Is this the new future? Is this new? Is he going to indoctrinate Vance in a way that he won't be more moderate? Will his successors or those who try to come after him feel like they've got to be equally extreme? Is this sort of like the new thing now? Everyone's shooting 3-pointers and nobody's going to the hole. Like, is this the new fad? Like, is this how it's going to be right now? Is this what people are saying and are thinking? And aren't there people in the Republican Party who are getting abortions or part of the LGBT community? Like, it's not like they could just have a whole party line and then you just ignore so many things because, well, this is what the party wants. There's got to be some Republicans saying, oh, hell no, we're not doing this. You're not going to do that to my kid. You're not going to do that to my parent. You're not going to marginalize. And so where are their voices and are they afraid of being destroyed? Will Trump do to them whatever he did, to who's our guy from Janesville, Paul Ryan? Like, where's Paul Ryan now? It's like if you seem to be like a threat or maybe someone who's up and coming and younger and good looking and persuasive, it's like something happens to you. It's like Trump pulls a lever and you just disappear. Are people afraid to stand up? Or will they just continue to go along with the party because now we like grotesque? And so we're going to try to be as grotesque as possible in order to continuing to make America great. It's more than a notion, Jeremy.
It is. And that might be one of the things that, I don't know, that scares me the most. When Kamala Harris talked about like turning the page and moving on and being exhausted, like that spoke to me 100%.
Right.
I'm like, I am tired of ranting and hearing people ranting and raving about things that maybe aren't even real. Like, there are real problems in our world. People are hurting and dying, and there's all kinds of challenges, all the challenges of managing a complicated country in a world, and nothing that Trump ever talked about even really approaches those problems.
Right.
I'm ready to turn the corner and heal. Right?
Sure.
I understand.
I need to.
Yeah, I understand. Like, it was real complicated for a lot of people to see Barack Obama be not only a black president, but an amazing president. He passed legislation and put things in place that we're going to be talking about for forever. Like, he's FDR, New Deal quality president, right? And you can just see the proof in that many of the things that happened during his time are the things that people are still debating about now, the Affordable Care Act, a lot of other changes. And I understand a lot of people real butthurt about that. They can't really comprehend what that meant for America to have not only a black man, but an amazingly capable black man in that job. But I'm like, okay, fine, white people, you got a thing, but I'm ready to move on from that. Like, our future in America is not, hopefully, going backwards about that. Or I viewed the MAGA movement as some kind of growing pain, like on the path towards an even better future that we don't even really conceive of yet. And it just feels, and I'd hope that in general, like, when history would look back upon the MAGA movement, it would be a 4 to 8 year absurdity that gets talked about, like the Know Nothing Party or a couple other of these reactionary movements. But to see the solidity with Trump just won this election, it gives me pause. And I don't know if that means it's going to take longer to turn this corner, or if we're charting off some other terrible path that
I think it's the latter. I think it's the latter that is making me nervous as well. Yeah. Are you afraid that the history books won't show President Obama in the light that you described, but that history will describe Trump that way?
I certainly do. And I don't know how to explain how I feel about it, but it's like we're in a time when truth seems to have almost no collective meaning. Like, Trump can say stuff and people can say stuff and
believe it.
And believe it. And I think, like, it was, Stephen Colbert, who years ago wrote about what he called truthiness, which is we were entering an age in which people don't care whether something is actually true. They care about whether or not it feels true. And then I call this like the age of nonsense. Like, and what history determines, I think, is not going to happen until we pass out of this age, and people can decide to say, okay, we're gonna tell a story about what just happened, and we're going to be as honest as possible about it. Because so much of what Trump does is manipulate that story. Like, he's like, oh no, that didn't happen. None of this stuff, just blatantly telling things that are untrue.
Right.
And it's strange to see people agree with that, because I honestly, like, I think I understand where they're coming from, and it's like, you don't really believe this, but you say you believe it because that's part of what being part of this group means, and there's a huge precedent for that all across the world. For history of people doing those kinds of things, and it usually it usually ends really badly. Like, that mindset and that approach does not tend to lead a nation somewhere great.
Right. And the oblivion toward moving in that direction is concerning. Like, this level of dishonesty. Like, do you think this is taking us to a better place? You're trying to ban and rebuke and cancel kinds of things because you think it'll bring some type of judgment on us. Do you not think that there's judgment for this level of dishonesty and hatred and the turning away of blatant wrongdoing and disregard for folks, for truth, for laws, for justice? Like, are people out of their minds that they can actually live in glass houses and throw boulders?
Yeah. The most sympathetic thing I can muster inside of me is that there must be a lot of people that are really desperate for something. They must need something so bad that
they do. Power and control.
Yeah.
But I also think that's frightening, because if you'll do this, like, somewhere deep down inside, I imagine, I hope that some thinking person is saying, I know this isn't right.
Yeah.
But it helps me. Like, I know this is not appropriate, but it's going to help my tax bracket. It's going to help me get my kid into college. It's going to help me launch my business. It's going to help me financially. I'm just going along with it. I know that it's not right. I wouldn't steal myself, but I'll buy it off a lifter,
Yeah.
or booster, I think it's called, on the streets. I didn't steal it, but I'll buy this Louis Vuitton bag because it's only a fraction of the cost. But deep down inside, that's wrong. But you can do it because you want it. You're justifying. You want to look good. It's probably sort of very shallow to do that. But at least I'm hoping that these folks can at least say, I can be redeemed because I know I'm wrong. I'm just going along for the ride because it helps me. But at the end of the day, I know this isn't right. But for those who are like, this is right, this is our birthright, this is the right thing to do. Heck, that's frightening too.
Yeah. And I mean, they're like, when I hear my white friends say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened." I mean, I feel like one of the things that I learned from, working with experienced Black people for a long time is like, sometimes when this stuff happens, you're like, well, I ain't surprised.
Right. And where have you been that you are so surprised?
Right. Like, how did you get to a place where you believe that this was not something within our national capacity, that you're surprised that this happens?
Right.
And I mean, I don't. It's still at the heart of it, the idea that like this is the path we've chose, that collectively, with convincing numbers,
Right.
71 million people decided that they want this person to run the country,
Right.
and they want that person's values to be how they do things. I mean, it's just that's what is most of all disheartening to me, because even in years past, when like maybe I didn't Republican won it, for me it makes all the like George W. Bush years and even some Nixon stuff seem quaint. I mean, just imagine, yeah. I mean, like, and even Reagan did some stuff which is like pretty terrible at the time. Some of it pales in comparison to what happens in a week in Trump's world.
Right.
And I mean, the other thing that I think about, and I know I don't. I'd be interested to hear your opinion about it, is like you've mentioned it on the show a couple times, but there is a whole swath of American evangelicals that view Trump as an instrument of
God,
of goodness, and that
I don't get it.
Yeah,
the level of deception, as if Christianity hinges on one or two issues. You're pro-life, but you're pro-death penalty. Is that not a life? So we can start it off, but we can end it when we want. Like that kind of foolishness makes me think: is perhaps evangelicalism? Is it a style of Christianity, or is it something parallel? Is it an alternate reality? Because how do you profess to be followers of Christ and not align with so much of what Christ said or taught? That's a whole nother discussion. I mean, no, I don't mean that we want to talk about it, but I mean, that's a whole another thing that's got me bewildered. Because when I think about who voted for him and who votes for him and who things that they benefit in order to help God, that's frightening to me too. Because like I don't get that part either. And who told you that those are the things that God cares about only? And so let's just say people feel like, okay, he's talking about these things that will appeal to the evangelical Christian community, and God bless America. I'm going to actually say Christmas and not happy holidays, those kinds of things. How do you then take two things that he may stand upon or promote and completely ignore his lifestyle, and then believe that he is a vessel of God? Because those things speak the truth of God, but character and divorce and salacious living and all these other things, like that's not a part of it, but he's pushing and promoting things that bespeak godliness to me. That's just amazing. That just astounds me.
Yeah.
And so I have to talk people off the ledge, the respective ledges, by saying that's not a depiction of all of Christianity. That's a brand of it, and we can't just write off faith and church and those kinds of things because of this level of foolishness. But I could see the confusion, because when I look at who he's being embraced by, and I try to use the word deifying very carefully, but I've never seen the evangelical Christian community treat a presidential candidate with such awe. I won't say worship, but such awe that, when he was shot and like stood up and did the Black Power sign, like he clenches his fist. And people are like celebrating almost like it was the third day and Christ had risen from the dead. Like,
Yeah.
and then I've seen like posters of like some verse like "No weapon formed against me shall prosper," or he's down on one knee praying and stuff. I'm like, okay, you all, this is really dangerous because he can be your candidate. Don't make this man your God. I mean, I knew Obama was flawed. Black people sat around the barbershops and said he could have did more for us. I know he's trying to be the people's president, and he had to be, but he could have did more with prison reform. He could have talked more about money and black wealth development like Bloomberg did to us when he was going. Like, there's other things that he could have done. But still, he was fair. He was smart. He was good. Yeah, but we didn't agree with everything. It's like these folks are swallowing it hook, line, and sinker. And if he's your candidate, he's your candidate. But call your candidate out on when they're wrong. Then if he's your candidate, let him be. But don't we believe in justice? So then let him come to justice on the wrong that he's done. Let him confess it. Let him, like what's the penalty? But you all want your candidate and your platform so much that you're going to ignore what he's doing and who he is. You don't care about him either. You're using him the way he's using you and your votes. And how's that working for you? Where's the spirituality in using that? And I don't think I want my faith legislated. I mean, and so you're going to legislate your faith. Man, that's wild.
I mean, I had this thought, and one of the things I come across is like comparing Trump with Billy Graham, Reverend Billy Graham. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, I grew up my grandparents on my mother's side were very religious. I grew up watching Dr. Graham on television.
Sure.
And I mean, like, there are a few people that can do an altar call. I mean, and that's why, like, when I was young in the church, like the idea of like taking a choice to like devote your life to goodness and kindness, and like, that's great. And that's always going to be good.
Yes.
And there is never, and I always found like I was always attracted to like the tent evangelism and the tail evangelism. Sure. Because it was like, in a world where people are talking about all kinds of stuff, somebody's up there saying, do you know Christ? Have you devoted your life to caring for other people? And like, I by no means agree with everything that Billy Graham and that crusade talked about, but charity and caring for people and doing good works was a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. And the idea that like somehow Trump is in any way like a moral leader in the same category as Billy Graham blows my mind. And because like, and I'm like, there are many stances that Billy Graham and his family have taken on issues that are deeply important to my heart that I deeply disagree with. But like, he was at least a pastor. He was at least someone who had devoted their life to doing that occupation. The idea that Trump, who could care less about any church anywhere, the idea that person would somehow be talked about in being the position of leading the evangelical movement, or even like in style, it just blows my mind. I mean, it feels like it is. It's like, I don't think I could write a ridiculous science fiction future story that is literally that crazy. Right. People would have said, you've got like, we believe in lightsabers and spaceships, but this is ridiculous.
Right. Remember when President Obama was talking about his faith, that same community was saying, oh, he's not a Christian, he's a Muslim. You get Trump saying, well, no, I've never really asked for forgiveness. I've never done anything that needs forgiving. The entrance for Christian faith, particularly for evangelical faith, is acknowledging your sin, asking for forgiveness, and accepting the Lord in your heart, including being absolved of your wrong, your guilt, and your sin. You have a person saying, I've never done anything. All the women you've hurt, the divorces you had, the children you've abandoned, the sexual assault, who knows how many people you put a hit out on or what have you. You're going to say to the whole world, I've never done anything that I need to repent of. Where in the minds of those people do they think reflects Christ or Christian values or values of salvation or renewal? That's absolutely ridiculous. You give that man a pass. But yet, Obama was a member of Trinity, United Church of Christ in Chicago. He worshiped at St. Sabina Catholic Church. He talked about his faith. And you're going to say, no, he's not. He's a Muslim. And he's talking about his faith, Trump said, in essence, no, I'm not in that camp because I've never knocked on the door of that camp because I've never done anything wrong. That camp are flawed. It's kind of like, like you said, true winners don't get captured, so he has no regard for like POWs. Christians are those who are flawed and need a savior. He doesn't need one. Maybe he thinks he is one. And for that to be okay with people. And they're still talking about that's God's chosen person. It's really that's really concerning to me that we want to spiritualize a party and deify. It's really frightening. So for me, there's so many moving pieces in this that's made it crazy.
I mean, I'll also reflect. I mean, I'm 43, so I'm
Sure.
a little older, and I remember when John Kerry lost, and I had been knocking on doors, and I was just, I literally couldn't believe it. I was like,
Right.
like, how could the nation possibly choose someone else? And I'll say one of the things that I really faulted him for, and the Democratic Party at the time, was like the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth campaign had come out, which was saying that like he actually it was undercutting his role as a veteran, saying actually it's all made up, it's just a bunch of nonsense, and all of that stuff was sort of some of the first real like fake news, right? I mean, like this stuff was made up, the people were hired. It's not like it was a smear campaign, but it was a huge, high-profile one that had a huge effect. He never called it out. He never called President Bush a liar, like even for the weapons of mass destruction stuff. He like was playing and he was doing what many Democrats I thought had done at the time, which is like bringing a gun to a knife fight. And I was like, this is your job. Like, you got to fight for all of us. Like, all the values that you hold, if you're not going to go toe-to-toe with this person and at least call them out on their most blatant, terrible things, like, you can't do this job. You can't be our candidate. And I'll say that one of the things that I, like, years from now, one of the things that I hold most interesting about this period which just happened was, like, Kamala Harris did a debate with Trump and made a fool out of him in front of everybody in the world.
The whole world.
Right? And everybody saw it. Right? She went on Fox News. Right? I mean, like, she stepped into the lion's den time after time. She was put in a hard place. It was a really short time to make a campaign, but I had not seen a Democrat do that in my lifetime.
Right, exactly.
I mean, like, sometimes going, like, when I used to go to Bernie Sanders rallies or a guy named Dennis Kucinich, there were a couple third-party candidates that spoke really to the radicalness that I care about, or even just being, like, radically committed to some basic values.
Right.
You're not going to compromise on because of all the complexities of things. And I don't know what the future holds for her, but any office she ever runs for, she will have my vote. And I think that, I hope that in her movement of being the leader of a new generation of leadership, I hope she leads that movement. I hope that she is deeply involved in guiding how Democrats are doing things in the future. I mean, like, there's so many innovative. I know her campaign did not get her in the presidency, but like Tim Walz and AOC were playing video games on Twitch stream. Like, they were reaching out to all kinds of different media and bringing and starting to build a coalition of younger people that care about core values and is serious about it.
I hope she comes back in 4 years.
Yeah.
I hope they don't push her to the side for some milquetoast guy who's going to try to do whatever the Democratic version of making America great again or bouncing back from Trump. There's some need for real leadership, and I think she offered a fresh, new embodiment of turning the next page, like what that piece really looks like. Well, man, Jeremy, I'm really glad that you're sitting here with me and allowing me to vent and to think out loud and to also think about what the long game is. Because by being Black in this country, there's a lot of thoughts that I have about this. But I also think that, when my wife was born in Selma 61 years ago, her relatives weren't voting because their lives were threatened. But yet they bought land, owned land, had kids, got married, started families, ran farms, sent their kids to college. And so I want to feel what I'm feeling in this moment, but then I want to shake myself and say, all right, bro, what you going to do then? In the midst of this, with what you know, does this really define you? It's a setback, but does it make me more committed to the work of the Center for Black Excellence in Culture? Heck yes. Does it make me more committed to training would-be allies or would-be non-black allies, oh yeah, we got to train even more. Do I need to start thinking about writing? Does this give me an extra commitment to my voice on Black Like Me podcast? It sure does. And so I want to make sure that I don't allow Trump and the crazy what am I trying to think of? Just all the impact, the fallout. That's what I'm thinking about. The fallout of all of this shrink my creativity. I've got to take a deep breath and say, all right, you know what? I'm going to be even more committed. I'm going to be even more vocal. I'm going to be even more clear. I'm going to call more people to positions of leadership and influence, because that's what we got. That's what we got to do right now. Because he's got a job to do and he's on it. But what's my job? What's my task? And so I think what I've got to help my people, my Black community, is to have spaces, even on this podcast, to talk about what's going on, but then ask, all right, what's your strategy? What's your silver bullet? What's your silver bullet? What's your superpower? What's your secret strategy? What's in your hand, Moses? What are you going to use? What are you going to do to really strive and thrive in the face of all of what's going on? And that's going to motivate me to really be on my job even more. That's what I'm going to do in light of all of this stuff. I'm going to shine even more, develop even more, work even harder, because this might he might have helped to define this moment for our country, for himself, for people who look like him, but I'm not going to let it redefine me. And I think the last point, Jeremy, is white people, y'all got some work to do, Jeremy, because it's the cousins, the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, the brothers, the pastors, the firefighters, the attorneys. Like, I think part of what allows this to happen is that it's hard. I think, or I wonder, is it hard for white people to believe that their fellow white people will do something like this? If someone does something really ignorant or grotesque on a national scale and they're Black, we all sort of collectively think, oh, why did they do that? Because Black people don't typically, oh my goodness, now we got to bear this shame. I don't think that our white counterparts have really lived in that kind of reality, but I think now they are. I feel like there's a pressure to say, I'm not that kind of white person. I'm not. I didn't vote for him. That's what I found happened the first time. People were like, I didn't vote. Like, they want to really separate themselves. But then not having the conversations or understanding why their relatives have voted, their friends, their neighbors, understanding the fear that caused them to do that, the lack of information, the ignorance. I think that there's got to be a reconciliation around the topic of white privilege, supremacy, and how tens of millions of people support this kind of foolishness is a real major discussion. Yeah, for the 12% of the Black people who didn't vote for Harris, and yeah, there's a discussion to be had, because we know that not all Black people are Democrats. There's a discussion to be had, and people will talk about it. But 70 million people, I know that those aren't all white, but when you start thinking about more than 70 million people who do or who did vote for him, there's just got to be a discussion around what's happening, what are we afraid of, and whatever the pour out is of this, whatever the judgment of this is, are we all somehow culpable? Because we know people who lean into this and we didn't want to talk about it, or we didn't want to believe it. I'm not saying that white people have got to fix all fringe white people, because I'm not going to accept that responsibility for Black people. But I think there's got to be an acknowledgement that folks know that these radicalized people are out here and they're acting like they're not. And everyone's like, oh my God. And once again, Black people are saying, we tried to tell y'all. Now you're seeing it on CNN, ABC, MSNBC. Like, we're seeing it all over the place. This is the reality. But at some point, I think people have got to start having talks and asking, what are we as white Americans so afraid of losing or afraid of becoming that we have now put this great nation and its people in such peril and such jeopardy? And so I offer that up for the listeners. I know people are going to want to know, how do you feel about Trump? Because they were hoping that Kamala would be, a female version of Obama, of President Obama. But I don't want to have discussions with white people about how I feel about Kamala losing. I want white people to have a conversation with white people about how does it feel to have Trump win on the promise of supporting your values, your goals, your legacy, and your rightful place in seats of power and position. That conversation's got to happen, in my opinion.
I agree.
Wow. Hey, so listen, folks, continue the conversation. You've got feelings and thoughts always. You know, we always put up a link to our Facebook page. We need to talk. It doesn't make sense to have this wonderful opportunity for community and then you process these things along. So come on in. The water's fine. Let's have these discussions. Click the link for Patreon to find out how you can continue to support this great podcast for as little as $2 a month. And I just want to thank all of my team members, Eli Steenlich and Jeremy Holiday and Ariana Proctor and Don Thornton and Jakesha Hunt for the great work that they do in editing, research, guest relations, and merchandise, and in helping this podcast to be really what it is. I really want to thank you, listeners, for continuing to come back to this space where I have the freedom to communicate my thoughts, my feelings, my rants, my celebrations as a tool for bringing us more closely together and to think differently about what solutions could look like if we would imagine doing something together. So thank you for being the best part of this podcast by being listeners. Please share this. Talk about it with your friends and family. And let's always lean in and become a part of the change we really want to see and experience. All right? Have a great day. Thank you for listening to Black Like Me podcast. Hey, Black Like Me podcast listeners. I want to make you aware of something that's really exciting. I am heading up the development of a Center for Black Excellence and Culture. It's the first of its kind space that's building innovation space, artistic space, creativity space, networking, senior space, intergenerational space, a library, performing arts, space that allows the Black community here in Wisconsin to tell its story, celebrate our story, and have cultural expression for explaining how our presence has made the state of Wisconsin, the Midwest, and the country even better. On Tuesday, the 19th of November, I'm doing a short 45-minute Zoom update where I'm going to be talking to our architects, some of my advisors, some of my content designers to share an update on this great event. I want you to click the link in the notes section so that you can come and check it out. It's, again, from 5 to 5:45 Central Standard Time on Tuesday, November 19th. I just want you to be a part of what we're doing. If you want to check out the center ahead of time, go to theblackcenter.org. But I just wanted to invite you to the space where I'm going to take about 45 minutes to update you on this fantastic endeavor that we know is going to change our region. All right, I hope to see you there.
Black Like Me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.